Hi, everyone. We're going to be talking about universal design for learning over the next 20 to 25 minutes. So let's get started. I'm going to be presenting with Lorna Olsen. Lorna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Lorna Olsen, and welcome to our presentation.
And I am Lori Swinney. We're both from, as you can see on the slide, from the Learning and Applied Innovation Center. We have probably more slides than I should have. I'll go through some of them quick. We'll do a little bit of talking and come up with some ideas of what you may be doing in your own courses and some discussion. So I will do the first part talking about universal design for learning, and then Lorna will follow up towards the end for the second half about Blackboard Ally. So to give a little clue or a hint of something that's coming. So first of all, universal design for learning. Let's make sure I can move my slide through. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, I'm hoping everyone at the end of our session will be able to explain what universal design for learning means, identify why it's important, and then summarize how Blackboard Ally can help you with some universal design for learning and accessibility guidelines. So we'll break it down a little bit and start with universal design. Like, take the learning part out of it. Well, universal design has been around for a long time. It's about the design and composition of the environment that basically can be accessed, understood, and used by everyone. And thinking about universal design, it goes back to about the 1970s, where North Carolina State University, some architects got together and thought, let's come up with some guidelines. So when people are constructing our buildings, tools for environment, software products, everything, that there's a framework about accessibility. Here's an example, one of my favorite ones that you're probably all very familiar with, the good old-fashioned doorknob. Because I have arthritis in my hands that have been getting a little worse lately, it's hard to make a fist and kind of grab that to turn it. And you think about it, I don't necessarily have a disability as such, but you think about other people that are not able to do that too. Maybe their hands don't work, maybe it's up too high on the door, lots of different things. So the old-fashioned doorknobs are pretty much going away unless you have an old house, and they're replaced by the new lever type that you can take your elbow and bump it down. You can use it from a wheelchair. You can, if you have a lot of groceries in your hand, you can kind of press on it to be able to open up the door. So it's one step forward. The very last one, for like everyone, are the electronic doors. So you walk up to the doors, it's raining, it's snowing, you have a bunch of kids with you, or you're pulling a cart and you can't really press anything and you just want it to open. That is the next iteration of it. So I'm thinking about that. What should we do about learning? What if we took universal design and added learning to it? So in that same kind of area, that no matter who needs to get access to it, to be able to use something, to get through a doorway, all of that, universal design for learning provides the students with the equal opportunity. And your content, your curriculum, it's designed in flexible ways to meet different needs of different students. It's prepared using different types of flexible means, methods, and materials. A really great book by an author, Thomas Tobin, is Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone. Just like going through that electric door, automatic door, everybody can get through that. That's the same way with thinking about universal design for learning. With learning as the key word in there, you think about the students. But another very important component of that you don't hear about as often is universal design for instruction. So UDI and UDL are three really important terms in thinking about our students that we need to think about different ways to teach to be able to reach students with the different ways to learn. I left this slide in here for just really quick, but it like lots of content there, but there's three ways people learn: through your engagement, through the representation, through the action and expression. And when you lay it out in this kind of format, it sort of looks like they all work independently. So this is the slide I like best. So you've got your strategic networks, your cognitive things like the how you're learning. They also work together with your affective networks, the why of learning, and then the recognition, the what of learning. This is all based on neuroscience research that's done by the Center for Applied Special Technologies, CAST. They're really the expert, and they've got a really great website on this, and it gives you lots of ideas on how to change your curriculum, why you should be doing things in different ways, and how this helps to reach out to your students. So we'll dissect that a little bit. So thinking about the why, the engagement, which was back up to your affective networks as CAST has labeled it. So the why, you think about what you're teaching. So why should students be learning it? How many times have we heard with our intro classes, like, why do I have to have geography? I'm never going to use geography. Or why do I have to use algebra? I'll never use that. I'm going to be a writer. So the why, the engagement, helps for them to take some ownership in what you're teaching and how it will be important to them throughout their life. So giving them some choice and some autonomy in what they're doing helps to get the engagement of the why. Very important to provide the students with the options on how to engage in different course activities. And then I don't know if others were in the session where they were talking about the instructional design and how you organize your course, thinking of what let's say Andrea Smith talked about is for every course that you have, when you have your weekly module, you start out with an overview of what you're going to learn this week, and then you list your objectives. What are your goals? How does it tie into the goal for the course? And why are these different writing assignments and techniques that you're doing in this course, these activities, why are they important? All of this goes to that effective network, the why, and encouraging student engagement. So I'll take a quick break. Questions on thinking about choice and autonomy. Who would dare to give, or maybe already does, give students choices in the types of assignments that they need to complete? Any ideas? I'll show you some examples a little bit later, but this is an example I like to talk about, is a typical term paper for a course. And it would normally be a writing assignment, let's say 15 to 20 pages. What if you have a student who really has a creative side of them and would really do a so much better of a job putting together a video for that term paper, including the references and all of that? That would give them a chance to be able to represent what they learned in your course in a different way, but yet still meet the objectives. The next one with the network was the what. How do you represent it? So that is about the course materials. How do you just, is it always readings? Or are there some videos in there? Thinking of different ways to be able to present the same material. So maybe one way is a textbook and how a cell divides. Another way would be to add a YouTube video that someone else has created showing how that works. And another way could be some type of interactive clicking that the student does to be able to move the cells around, showing how they divide. The other just quick bullet point with that is to be able to connect their previous knowledge. We talk a lot about scaffolding. So last week we talked about what cells were made up of. This week we'll talk about how they divide and become two cells. So you try to connect that knowledge together and how you illustrate it in different ways. So the third one was the how, the action and expression. This is a little bit back to where I was talking about the student, instead of writing the term paper, may choose to demonstrate what they learn. The other part of the how with the action and expression, we hear about that a lot in universal design, is flexibility. And in some of the national surveys that have gone around about the high flex and the COVID type of teaching, part of what students really appreciated that helped them with the different ways that they learned was having some flexibility, maybe with deadlines on assignments, making sure you still have a hard final deadline, but they're worried that they will lose some of this once they get back to sort of the new normal of teaching. Keeping some of that flexibility is universal design for learning by nature, that you may not have even known you were doing this, but you're providing that flexibility and somewhat of a choice and autonomy for our students. Another very important part of this action and expression, the how, is providing that feedback. Difficult in really, really large classes to be able to provide that. And I know we worked with the Office of Teaching and Learning a couple of months ago, where Stacy Duffield put on a presentation on providing feedback. There's a lot of different ways, but giving students multiple opportunities for them to think about what they're doing with their assignments. Are they moving forward in the right way? And providing feedback for them helps them with their action and expression. So I've got a couple of assignments here, just as an example, is probably similar to the one that I first talked about. So let's say what the students need to do is describe various types of learning. Thinking to your own course, what would you ask them to do for that? It'd probably be one option. This is what you do. You write a paper about it, or you do a presentation about it. Here's a couple of options that are listed on a website I'll have on our very last slide for resources. But in this particular case, the instructor gave options of they could do a poster presentation, which is a very complex research-based type of poster. They could do a research project. Again, your probably standard kind of term paper. You could do a presentation, create a video, or maybe even, depending on your students, create a video or a computer simulation. Maybe you've got some students with really some great technical skills. The other part of the flexibility that we talked about was the due date being fixed, but providing draft dates that are flexible for different times, which gives you the opportunity to be able to provide feedback on those drafts, and that gives the students some kind of control over and autonomy on what they're doing. But keeping the due date at the end very fixed, because we still are in a system that we need to give a grade. Students need to meet deadlines to be able to finish their work. Another example is for the content that you're providing, thinking of all the content you have in Blackboard, have it available in multiple formats. Maybe have a video showing something happening, article that was written that describes what is happening. Think about captions on all your videos. Using UJEC here with NDSU automatically captions your videos. But if you're gathering videos from other sources, check on the captioning on those. And I listened to an interview by a student that said at some point, the video and the talking on the video gets to be just so much sort of cognitive overload, seeing too much. They're just watching all these Zoom sessions all day long and talking and screen up there. Sometimes they just need the audio only option without the visual distractions to be able to really absorb what's going on or what's being talked about. And Lorna will show you a little bit about how we have some of those things available already, which will really be helpful. So a quick review on this is thinking about universal design for your course for learning. Come up with multiple ways to engage your students and how the content can be represented to them in different ways. So it's not always straight lecture. It's not always reading. Vary it up a bit. And then be open to some flexible means of expression. Thinking about how do they show you they've accomplished the goals. They can do what you set out for them to be able to do for the course. And I will turn things over to Lorna.
All right. So for those of you that have been using Blackboard, you may have noticed that as of December 2020, little icons started appearing in your courses. We turned on Blackboard Ally at NDSU for all courses for the beginning of the spring semester. So before at the end of the fall semester, we turned it on. And what Blackboard Ally does is it really supports UDL in a couple of different ways. There's two different things that it does for both instructors and for students. One is right from the start, students can download and listen or view content, most content in alternative formats and whatever works best for them. And then Ally also provides some guidance for instructors. So, and when we get to the next slide, you'll see the little icons that you see and explain what they mean. We get a lot of questions about where should I start trying to make my courses more accessible. And by making your course content more accessible, you're really following the principles of UDL. You're providing multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, and so forth. And so what we suggest is you start with your course syllabus. So for fall semester, try and get your syllabus to be completely accessible. Take a look at any required textbook that you're using. Textbooks coming directly from a publisher may or may not be accessible in the digital format. And so that's something to be taking a look at. Any required readings that you have, try and make sure that they're accessible. And then, as Lori mentioned, make sure that all of your videos are captioned. So next slide, Lori. In your courses, what you'll see as an instructor is you'll see little gear-shaped icons to the left of most of your content, but not all. And then students will see, and instructors will see on the right, there's a little A with a down arrow, and that's where they can download the alternative formats. So both instructors and students see both of those sets of icons. Students don't see the gear icons. And the different color coding of the icons that you'll see there tells you the relative accessibility of that particular piece of content. We're aiming for 100%, which is perfect, and that's the dark green little gear icon there. But at this point, the intention is you don't have to have everything 100% accessible to start with. It's kind of an ongoing process, and as you add more content and edit it later, you want to make sure that you're taking a look at accessibility. And the nice thing about Ally is it does help you learn more about how you're creating accessibility or accessible content. So as you create new content, you start to internalize and just doing those things by default. So if you would go to the next slide, please, Lori. Okay, so the process as an instructor. You will see when you hover your mouse pointer over the little gear icon, it'll just tell you low, medium, high, perfect. If you click on the gear icon, the instructor feedback panel will appear, and it will show you in that feedback panel the percentage of accessibility issues with that particular item. And so you click the indicator and you see the percentage. Then the next step is you look at the instructor feedback panel that'll appear on the right, and there will be a couple of different things. It'll tell you what the issue is. The image is missing an alternative description, so forth. You can click on what this means to learn more, and then you can also click on the second option to find out how to fix it. What you'll see in the instructor feedback panel will vary depending on the type of content it is and what the issue may be for each piece. And so when you're going in to improve your file, you'll see the guidance in the instructor feedback panel. And oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but sometimes you can fix the issue right within the instructor feedback panel. Other times you're going to need to download the file or open the original file, make the recommended fixes, and then upload the changed file back into Blackboard in the instructor feedback file. So where you see where it says improve your file, you may be able to, for instance, add an alternative description, text description for an image right there within Ally. Other times you may have to upload a fixed file to make the change. And again, when you're looking at this, you're aiming for 100% or perfect to increase your score. But again, it's a work in progress. And so if you would go to the next slide, Lori. This is what your students will see. Again, they don't see the gear icons. They'll click on the little download alternative formats icon, and you can do this as an instructor as well. And the name of the file will be there. And then they have a choice of different files or different formats they can download it in. What is listed here will vary depending on the type of file that they are looking at an alternative format for. And the nice thing about the alternative formats is this doesn't necessarily mean it's restricted to those learners that have a physical disability or a cognitive disability or anything. It's really useful for everyone. And that's the principles of universal design. Make it accessible for everyone, regardless of their circumstances. And so an example, I oftentimes will go in and I'm on a cell phone reading things in a browser, and a tiny cell phone screen can be kind of problematic. So just for simplistics, I will use the HTML option, and it strips out a lot of the extra bells and whistles, and what you get is the content. Or I might listen to it in an audio version. So it gives the students the choice, multiple means of engagement with the content for UDL. So if you would go to the next slide, Lori. A couple of things before we end this that I did want to mention is Lori mentioned that it's important to make sure that your videos are closed captioned. She did mention UJA, and UJA automatically auto captions videos, but like any other piece, it's not always 100% accurate in those closed captions. And so UJA is built into our instance of Blackboard at NDSU. It is fairly easy to, I should say not fairly easy, but relatively easy to edit those closed captions. And that's something that you'd want to do. You can upload things to YouTube, and YouTube does auto captioning as well. Again, you'd need to edit those auto captions. So that's something I wanted to let you know that Ally does not check those videos to see if they're closed captions. And so I mentioned earlier as I was talking that Ally checks most content, but not all. Videos are one of those things it doesn't check, but also, for instance, Excel files. Ally currently can't check Excel files for accessibility. And so it's not everything will be checked. So Lori, if you could go back to the resources slide and share your presentation again. Okay, we do have several resources on the PowerPoint slides that will be part of the record or the presentation, and they'll be in the recording as well. Are there any questions at this point, since we have about 4 minutes left? And you can either unmute your mic or type it in the chat window if you'd like.
Does anyone have an assignment they've already done or something in their course that they think now probably meets Universal Design for Learning guidelines? Any ideas?
Well, there is one thing that I would like to add at this point is if you're getting digital materials from a textbook publisher or content from other third-party resources and things, you'll also want to make sure that those types of content are accessible as well. Ally may or may not check those types of content, so you may need to check with the provider of the content to make sure that they're accessible.
Something else, I'll throw a plug in. We worked last fall on a project, and we developed 4 faculty certificate courses, one of which was Universal Design for Learning and Digital Accessibility. And it is available if anyone is interested in, we're piloting it now with faculty and staff, that it's available. It only runs about 4 to 8 hours, depending on how fast you read and how much work you put into it. It's very simple, but it's got some really great ideas, examples, and more information on Universal Design for Learning and accessibility on why it is important. So we'd love to have you and we'll post that on the website too with the session recordings on where you'd be able to join in. But otherwise, you just contact us about getting enrolled in the course.
And I see that Mark Coppin is here from Disability Services. And Mark, would you care to comment on the alternative formats for students? We have about 1 minute left.
Sure. One of the nice things about having it automatically, once a document is accessible, it's really nice for us to be able to have it available in an alternate format for a student who may or may not request an alternate format through Disability Services. It really saves us that step, but it also is in a format that is preferable for that student's learning, so that student will be more successful in your classroom. So having them in those alternate formats, I think ultimately once we roll out and UDL becomes common practice and these documents become all accessible, hopefully there'll be less students requesting services through Disability Services because they'll just be a part of your classroom materials. So
thank you, Mark. And the breakout rooms are going to be closing here very shortly. So I'd like, on behalf of Lori and I, thank you for joining us and good luck working with Blackboard Ally. And if you have questions, you can always contact the IT help desk and they will refer it to the Lake Center.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone.